Afternoon, everyone. Not quite rocket ships, but very sexy, first-of-a-kind innovation, deep tech, climate tech, also known as maggot robots. So we'll tell you how we got maggot robots to scale and how we've bridged the gap between first-of-a-kind innovation and regulation to do that. All right, I'll get the hang of that. Just before we do, I'm sure you've heard some of these stats before. Food waste is one of the largest problems that we as human beings create that can actually solve. Food waste represents 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions, 3% for Australia. If it was a country, it would be the third biggest emitter of CO2 equivalent emissions after the United States and China. So if there's one thing that we can get out of landfills and should do, it's food waste. It costs the Australian economy over $36 billion a year. Prices are going up with landfill levies and legislation. Rural communities are getting left behind. We're seeing landfills like Jindabyne and Cooma and others getting full, and then trucking and scope 3 emissions increases as we go to metro landfills, which are also running out of room, with Sydney's landfills to be predicted to be running out by 2030, also Perth not far behind. New sites take too long. The irony of that is that we're actually facing a food production shortfall, predicted to be 20% as a minimum by 2050. So we're wasting all of that food, 7 million tonnes just in Australia a year, and by 2050 there's going to be a 20% food shortfall. We have to do better. We've got to find other sources of protein. We've got to find more sovereign safety around fertilisers, and we have to find alternative ways of feeding our livestock. Otherwise, we'll have a problem. Australia will probably be all right because we're the lucky country, but there'll be lots of other countries that aren't, and that's just due to population growth, burgeoning middle classes in countries like India, China, Indonesia, all wanting more protein, and there just isn't going to be enough. So for those of you who don't know who Goterra is, we harness the power of black soldier fly larvae along with robotics. We take food waste both clean at on-site customers like Barangaroo Lendlease in Sydney, the Hyatt Regency in Sydney, Melbourne Airport, where we have a unit on-site dealing with the clean food waste, predominantly clean food waste from cafeterias and retailers that generate it. We also have aggregated sites, so our Hume headquarters, where we take retailer food waste in, which is both packaged and fresh produce, and we process it through deep packaging technology. We have one at Albury City Council, who've been a wonderful leader in trailblazer in trialling the technology. And we also just have a recent one with the City of Sydney, but they're going to be talking about that tomorrow. The food waste gets basically macerated and then fed by hydraulics and robots into the top of the MIB. And it's not Men in Black, it's modular infrastructure for biological services. So effectively a retrofitted refrigerated container, high density racking, 340 trays that get moved around by robots to feeding stations, tens of thousands of larvae, so about 30,000 larvae in each tray that start munching away voraciously and promiscuously, which I always get told not to say because I've got a lisp, but I give it a red hot crack every time. They eat it and they poo it out, which is called frass. So frass is maggot shit. They're the two sustainable byproducts that come from the food waste. You have an insect protein, highly sought after, we have more demand than we can supply, and frass, which is effectively an insect manure. It's not classed as an insect manure, it's classed as a compost, and it has to be composted to the standard, and it can go either straight to agriculture or as a compost blend. And for green waste composters, any green waste composters in the room, it is a supercharger if you add it in as a mix. At the end of the cycle, our service techs take out the trays, they take the fat, juicy, mature larvae and frass, tip them into IBCs, reseed them with neonates, so 3 to 5 day old larvae. In it goes, takes about 2 hours, close the doors and the system repeats itself. The larvae and the frass are taken to our hubs, so it's a hub and spoke model. They are separated, frass is sent for composting, larvae are washed, slaughtered ethically, and then cooked, basically. And then they're sold to poultry, both eggs and meat production, aquaculture, a huge market for aquaculture and fish meal, but also pet food as well is the other market. It is a restricted animal material, so it can't go to ruminants or pigs. So that's maggots in a box in a couple of minutes, and you can all talk about it tonight in your 80s outfits and be put off your dinner. So disruption requires more than technology. So the operation, I think the opportunity, everyone's happy that circular economy is getting more traction, that it's getting the headlines, that legislation's following is great. There is NIMBYism. We feel that we've solved for that, so that's not one of the obstacles here. But first-of-a-kind innovation is definitely outpacing the systems that are designed to regulate it, and it's a real challenge for a startup that is trying to scale up, and it can be critically wounding if we're not careful. The regulators, innovators, and councils are being asked to interpret the new technology and business models through the old lenses and frameworks, which doesn't really work. I empathise and sympathise with those that have to deal with the first-of-a-kind innovation, but we've got to do it much, much more efficiently than we are if we want to really change the status quo and be a more innovative nation when it comes to waste processing. So what does that really look like? So most environmental laws are written with that traditional centralised lens, not a decentralised lens. The Goterra model, or models like it, are both a centralised hub, but with lots of decentralised spokes. So we can actually put the solution where the waste is being generated, which for some of your larger tier 1 customers that have neighbours rating or green building rating can really help them because they're reducing their scope 3 significantly. Critically, the food waste isn't classed as food waste because what leaves the premises is a live larvae and an insect frass, but we don't neatly fit into a box. Regulatory uncertainty slows progress more than the technical readiness does, and the misalignment creates risk for all. How does it play out? Well, delayed approvals, which I'll talk about, site unavailability, greenfield disadvantages, we've got a good case study on that, classification difficulty for new outputs like frass, and then the lack of investment due to perceived risk, which then threatens the success and scale-up of something that is now highly sought after. So taking that greenfield case study, so Wetherell Park, building a blank slate. So if you look at the top right, that is actually the industrial precinct that we work on. Believe it or not, in Unit 3, which is the second from the left, that is actually now a food processing, waste processing facility right in the heart of Wetherell Park. It took all the full court press of engagement with the regulators, council, DA, EPA, the challenges we had to go through the EIS, we had to look at dust, odour, traffic, specifically odour though, and we had to prove compliance with a non-traditional tech. The EPA, I feel in the room there's a bit of tension with the EPA. I just want to put it out here, they've been absolutely fantastic. They've been a really strong support about trying to get new technology through to plug the infrastructure gap, and there is a very pressing infrastructure gap that we believe we can help plug. Councils, the council in question here, I won't name who it is, didn't do anything wrong, but definitely struggled with the approval process in the DA with the first of a kind. We weren't faultless. We didn't understand all the regulations well enough or the process. Once we got a consultant involved who did, things went a lot smoother. There's a picture of car parking spaces there, in wet car parking spaces, because I measured them in the rain, because we lost 2 months of approval of the site because of those car parking spaces. Car parking spaces that were already there, we didn't place them there. They were just wrong on the site plans, which we also didn't do because they were also there, but we lost 2 months, toing and froing, 14-day cycle to the council, 14-day response time back, 14-day response time. You just burn time, which burns money when you've got a site that you're paying rent for in Wetherell Park that you can't actually take any waste in. Very, very painful for a scale-up. It's not scarred me, I promise, but I certainly don't want to be measuring car parking spaces in the rain again. And then we lost another month because the sweat paths were then wrong, so we had to go through that. I think councils need more support in this area. The examples that I think work quite well are the special activation precincts where you have concierge assistance both for the council but also for the proprietor that's trying to bring something through. I think that's a very useful model that can help both parties navigate some of the uncertainty. The other piece that has worked for us is building trust. It's not always pleasant when you have to give bad news, but it's important to be transparent and honest. First adopters are absolutely crucial advocates. So the likes of Lend-Lease JLL, the likes of Albury City Council, taking the innovation, being those trailblazers, those first adopters, and then being very, very generous with their time to let tours come through and see it, are absolutely crucial for new, first-of-a-kind deep tech to get approved. A bit like Uber, if you think about it, you know, the legislation and the regulation hadn't caught up, but the adoption really drove a change that had to happen. We're not an Uber by any change, but we are trying to disrupt a very traditional waste system that I used to work in the corporate space at Suez. Early engagement with the EPA and councils is also critical. Like I say, the EPA have been absolutely really supportive. They've come to the sites. Our older site isn't ideal because we have neighbours very close by, and it's old tech. The new sites, you wouldn't even know that they're there. Our newest site has sensitive receptors less than 100 metres away in an inner city setting, and we've had zero odour complaints because we know how to solve for that. Transparency with data and third-party assessments is actually absolutely critical. So getting the odour reports out there, the traffic management reports, which are quite painful actually. So just to change the traffic management plan and the opening hours of a facility is a 3-month process. And again, from a startup that's trying to scale up, that has more demand than it can supply, both on the front end and the back end, it's a frustrating and painful problem. Getting frustrated about it, though, I can tell you does not help. It does not speed you through. It probably just delays it. Trial projects like the City of Sydney are absolutely critical for proving that things can be done. The legislation that's just been passed in terms of the FOGO recycling bill has created a wave of demand that, again, we are struggling to keep up with. And having, again, absolutely sustainably minded, trailblazing councils like the City of Sydney using our technology really shows that it can be done, and people are prepared to try something a bit harder, and then realising it's not hard. Bringing the circular economy to life, so actually showing that it does work, is critical. The picture there at the Hyatt Regency. So the Hyatt Regency is the largest hotel in Australia. It's got over 900 rooms on Sussex Street in the city. We have a unit in the dock, which is a very small dock and a very busy dock for a big hotel. We process all the food waste there. The food waste is then treated the same way as the system that I went through. The larvae goes to their chicken supplier or egg supplier. The chickens eat the larvae, lay the eggs, and the eggs go back to the breakfast table. The circle is complete. So always looking for things like that. And then communicating the wins and the challenges. So the picture of our fearless leader in a waste throne is definitely clickbait in the AFR, just to show that there are challenges out there. So another fun fact for you, 3.5 billion was raised for Aussie startups in 2023, similar amount last year. 4% went to female founders, which is really, really shit. We've got to do better as a country. We've got some brilliant female leaders out there with brilliant ideas, and they need to be supported if we are going to change the needle quickly. We can scale up very, very quickly. Our latest site went from finding the site through approval in roughly 9 months. The Wetherill Park site, with all of the shenanigans around DA approval, which was equally as our fault as it was the council's, was still 2 years, which in New South Wales is pretty unheard of. And now that we've been operating for the best part of half a year with no complaints from our neighbours, which are literally either side of us, we'll look to increase the capacity there. So closing the infrastructure gap, again, the bill that has been passed is fantastic. I am concerned, though, that the demand versus supply is going to cause a mad scramble for the capacity. We are going to drive inefficient vehicle miles up to Forbes and out to the ACT, and we need to do better to make sure that the system will match that demand. To close the gap, I was here with Suez presenting, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. It's the same soapbox that I'll get on. The waste levies need to be used better. They should be used as an economic instrument to stimulate innovation that drives a circular economy. There's not enough of that. There's plenty of revenues that come out of it. The funding isn't there, or it isn't there quick enough, and then the actual process to get the funding also takes months and months and months and months, which from a startup perspective is another nail in the coffin if you're not careful. Accelerating the approvals with clear national pathways for circular technologies, enabling land access, that's a real challenge for a startup. A lot of the big boys and girls in the waste industry already have the land parcels that you can easily amend your DAs on. Not all of the big boys and girls want to play nicely in the sandpit because they're competing for the same source, that they want to make their larger facilities more efficient. So that's a challenging thing to overcome. So we're always looking for those co-location partners where you have co-location like we have with our Albury City Council stack or our latest stack with the City of Sydney. You can move through the planning process a lot quicker because you already have a waste license to work with and you already have parameters, so it's a much quicker process than a greenfield site. And finally, better aligning that regulation with innovation. That's what we have to do. So, maggot robots, maggots in a box, munching on food waste and saving the world one MIB at a time. Thank you.